Some development work to be done at Lansdowne Road. They're going to build some rows of seating for to accommodate 200 journalists, and I've indicated the number of rows with an X. Now the seats per row is given by 200 divided by X, so there's 200 journalists divided by the number of rows. That tells us the seats per row. So we've had to write an equation here in X for that, and that is an equation is 200 divided by X. That's part of the problem. There's marks going for writing down 200 divided by X. Now later on in the development they decided they're going to build less number of rows. Up here we had a design that we're going to build X rows. They've reduced the number of rows now. They're going to build 3 less, and written algebraically that is X minus 3. So the new number of rows is X minus 3. Now we're asked to give an equation for the number of seats per row for this new one. So the new setup, the seats per row is equal to 200, and 200 is the number of journalists, divided by the new number of rows, which is X minus 3. So you need to write this down for marks for it. This is the second equation. So for the new setup, seats per row is 200 divided by X minus 3. Now they also tell us then that they have to, because they reduce the number of rows, they need to add more seats onto each row. And they tell us that the newer rows have 15 extra seats on them. So in words, this is the new seats per row is equal to the old seats per row plus 15. Or algebraically, so the new seating arrangement is 200, new seats per row is 200 divided by X minus 3. The old arrangement was 200 divided by X plus 15. So the new number is equal to the old number plus 15. And that 15 reflects that they have to put 15 more seats in per row. We're asked to solve for X, to find what X is. Now this is a fairly nasty looking equation here. Why is it nasty? Because we've X minus 3 in the denominators. We really don't like having things like in the denominator like that. In fact, we like to clear fractions as early as possible. We like just dealing with nice rows without any dividers or fractions on it. So this is an equation. If we multiply everything by the equation by what's in each denominator, we can clear the fractions. So if I want to get rid of X minus 3, I multiply everything through by X minus 3. If I wanted to get rid of X, I multiply everything through by X. And if I multiply 200 all divided by X minus 3, if I multiply that by X minus 3, the X minus 3 cancels, and I'm just left with 200, which is what we want to achieve. So here I've done it. I've multiplied everything in this equation through by X minus 3. So 200 all divided by X minus 3 multiplied by X minus 3 gives us this here. Now we can cancel the X minus 3 above and below, and that just leaves us 200, which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to get rid of X minus 3. Not so lucky here, I'm afraid. So we have 200 multiplied by X minus 3 all divided by X. And here it's 15 multiplied by X minus 3. So recall that we have to multiply, because it's an equation, we have to multiply all the way across by X minus 3. So after a bit of tidying up, as I mentioned, the X minus 3's cancel here and I'm left with 200. There's no cancellation here, so I have to multiply it out. So 200 times X minus 3 times 200, that gives me 200X minus 600. That is still over X here. We haven't cleared that fraction here. Multiply on this side, 15 times X minus 3 gives me 15X minus 45. I want to get rid of this X in the fraction here. So it's an equation. I multiply all the way through by X. We'll get rid of that. So 200 multiplied by X gives me 200X. I multiply this by X, and it comes X multiplied by 200X minus 600, all divided by X. Now these X's cancel because of the same above and below the fraction line. And here we have 15X minus 45, all multiplied by X. We can bring this onto the next line here after some simplification. Remember, recall the X's cancel here, they're gone. So essentially what I'm left with is 200X equals 200X minus 600, because those X's cancel, plus 15X squared. I get the 15X squared from X multiplied by 15X minus 45X. I get minus 45. x from x multiplied by minus 45. This equation is looking much better now. We've got rid of all the fractions. We've cleared the fractions up, and we can do a bit more tidying up. On the left hand side I have 200x. On the right hand side I have 200x minus 600 plus 15x squared minus 45x. I can cancel those 200x's off each side. So on the left hand side it goes to 0, and I just cross it off on the right hand side. So the new equation then is a quadratic equation. It's 15x squared minus 45x minus 600 equals 0. Now we could try and factor that straight away, or we could plug it into the quadratic equation to solve it. But we can tidy it up a little bit more by getting rid of the common factor 15 across here. So I'm going to divide each term here by 15. So 15x squared divided by 15 is x squared, minus 45x divided by 15 is minus 3x, minus 600 divided by 15 is minus 40. Well, it's an equation. I have to do everything on the left and the same as on the right. 0 divided by 15 is still 0. 0 divided by 15 is still 0. So this is a much neater looking one. We could either try and factor that directly or use the quadratic formula, and the quadratic formula will always work. And just to recap on the quadratic formula, it's minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug this in. A is 1, b is minus 3, and c is minus 40. So minus b, so minus 3 is 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times a is 1, and c is minus 40. Bit of tidying up here. 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 160 all over 2. That's 3 plus or minus the square root of 169 all over 2. I can take the square root of 169 and it's 13. So it's 3 plus or minus 13 all over 2. I can simplify that more. That's 16 divided by 2 and minus 10 divided by 2. Simplify further. That gives me 8 and minus 5. Now remember what x is. X is the number of rows that are required initially. We have to solve for x. We're not going to build a negative number of rows. That's one of the side effects of using quadratic equations, is that you can get the spurious answer. And why do you get it? Well, because you have a plus and a minus of the square root. So we know we're not going to build minus 5 rows. We cross that out, keeping 8 as our answer. So our answer for this question, x equals 8.